Hello and welcome back, adventurers. This is Captain TTRPG, and today we're talking about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Hello and welcome back, adventurers. Today we continue our spell rank top and bottom fives with rank 2 spells. This time, just like last time, we're going to give 5 that are my best, 5 that I think are the worst at rank 2 spells, and yes, I'm going to go ahead and give some honorable mentions as well. There's just so many good spells, and actually at rank 2, we have our highest count for spells, at least on Archives of Nethys, at 189. That's a lot of spells. Yes, I've done a lot of reading. Not always successfully. Now, when we talk about the spells, I know I brought it up before, we're looking at all kinds of criteria in here. Number of actions, range, duration, the number of targets, the effect itself, whether it's control, support, utility, damage, AoE damage, what the heightening looks like, how easy it is to fit into your turns or onto your builds. Are they worth a prepared slot for prepared casters? Is it worth it to have as one of your limited repertoire spells? Is it worth becoming a signature spell? Is it good for a full caster or a Gish character or just marshals with free archetypes? So many things to keep in mind, and I'm going to add one more to the list. We haven't really run into this yet, and now we're going to start seeing it pop up all the time. Well, not all the time, but enough that it's worth talking about, and that is a specific trait called Incapacitation. Plenty of people have talked about this, of course, and if you're playing the system, this is a very critical trait, especially in spells, but it shows up at other things. We're going to talk about how it relates to spells specifically. The Incapacitation trait means that when you cast a spell with this trait on an enemy, that enemy, as long as they're affected by the spell, doesn't have to be a single target spell or anything like that, but as long as the spell has it, that any creature that is more than twice the spell's rank treats their check, usually a save against it, as 1 degree of success higher. Now I want to repeat that. The rank of the spell doubled, right? So if I'm casting Fear at rank 1 against a CR2 creature, that creature is not going to get a level of success better because they're not higher than double the spell's rank. But if I cast that rank 1 Fear against a CR3 creature, now that creature is going to get 1 degree of success better. However, if I upcast Fear to rank 2, now that CR3 creature does not get to increase their save on it because now they are not higher than double the spell's rank that you cast it at. So keep that in mind when we talk about Incapacitation. Yes, it can be a terrible trait to have. Do not kid yourself, but it is not the end all. There are still spells that have it that are very good. You just have to know how to target your enemies properly with them, or else you may end up wasting it to some extent, or they have to have really, really powerful effects that even affect creatures on a success, possibly even a critical success, to make them feel valuable. So I just want to put that out there before we get into the spells, because at second rank we start to see it crop up, and as we go further, it's just going to keep popping back up. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into my top 5 and bottom 5. And as always, I will be very excited about my top 5, and I will be significantly less excited about those in the bottom 5. But starting on a positive note, we have Entangling Flora. This is 2 actions, has the Concentrate, Manipulate, Wood, and Plant traits. It is for arcane and primal casters, has a range of 120 feet, and in that you're going to create a 20-foot burst. This lasts for 1 minute, and you don't have to sustain it, just lasts for 1 minute. The whole area is difficult terrain. Any creature starting the area must make a reflex save, or on a failure have a -10 circumstance penalty to their speeds, or on a crit fail, be immobilized for a round. They can attempt to escape to remove the effect of the immobilize or the circumstance penalty. A 20-foot burst, meaning fireball size, and we haven't even gotten to fireball yet, that's not in this video, but it's that size. It covers, unless I did my math wrong, which probably did, but whatever, it covers 44 squares. Any creature near the center is going to have a lot of work to do just to get out of the difficult terrain alone, because difficult terrain means that moving into a square of it takes 5 extra feet of movement. So if a creature fails the save, and let's assume an average of 25 feet per move action, then they can only move 1 square per action because they've been reduced down to 15 feet instead of 25, and it takes 10 feet to move into 1 square for them, and you don't get to round up. So there you go. If the creature has a 30-foot move speed, which is pretty common, then they'd get a whole 2 squares if they failed that save and they're in the middle of this thing. They're not getting out. So this can be incredible lockdown for multiple enemies in a combat. Even if they succeed at the save and they're not taking the minus 10-foot circumstance penalty, probably looking at 3 squares per action they can move, and that's still going to hurt a lot because it'll take them at least a couple actions just to get out, and they've wasted so much of their turns. If you can hit 2 or 3 creatures, you could penalize all of these melee enemies significantly. Now, obviously, on the crit fail, immobilization is fantastic, but I don't give much attention to crit fail outcomes just because they're not going to pop up much. And yes, a creature can make an escape action to not take the speed penalty or the immobilization if they did fail. Great, they're wasting an action and increasing their multiple attack penalty just to try to get out of this. That's a win for you, the caster. This is a prime candidate, by the way, for the widen spell shape, because it's going to increase 5 feet, which it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you got something so large and add another 5 feet, add another layer of squares they have to exit, especially when the penalty is so brutal, you could take out a whole other action from them just because you increase it by that little bit. No, this doesn't do damage, and it doesn't really hurt casters or ranged combatants much. It can, because it makes it harder for them to reposition themselves, but it's not going to do a ton to them. But especially at this low level, you're probably dealing with a lot of melee enemies who are meant to run up and attack you, and they are going to struggle, while you and your ranged allies just go to town on them, and there's just not a whole lot they can do about it. There is no heighten here, so just leave it as a second rank spell to use, but other than that, it's just kind of useful. There you go. Oh yeah, and not going to help against flying creatures, but at level 3, probably not your biggest concern. Mind Games. 2 actions, as the uncommon enchantment and mental traits, is for arcane and occult casters, has a range of 30 feet, affects 1 creature who gets a will save, and lasts for 1 minute, but does require sustaining, and they get to redo the will save with each sustain action. On a crit fail, the target is stunned 2. On a fail, the target is stunned 1. On success, nothing happens to the target. If they critically succeed, you are stunned 1. I am not a fan of spells where a success outcome from the enemy means nothing happened. So a successful save, something should still happen to them. So anytime when nothing happens, it's questionable. If that's going to be the case, the rest of the spell needs to be phenomenal. Here, the fail is strong. It's, losing an action on their turn is really solid. However, it doesn't make up for the fact that there's no success outcome, and even worse, it has a crit success outcome that's negative, right? There's no incapacitation trait, thankfully, or this would be just, oh my gosh, so brutal. But anytime a creature crit succeeds this, you are now stunned, taking a penalty. Boy, that really, really hurts. A higher level creature won't get any free crit successes just by getting success. But with high enough saves, you may be casting this with up to like a 25 or 30% chance to stun yourself if you choose a creature that's maybe a level 2 higher than yours and has a good will save, like, say, caster enemies. And anything like that, any kind of gamble like that is just not worth it. The fact that this is sustained could just increase the chance that you eventually stun yourself. Yes, you can try to keep them stunned turn after turn, or make it worse, more likely, right? Because if they could fail, great, let it sit there. But they're going to get the chance to over and over save, and eventually they're going to crit save, and you're going to hurt yourself. I just don't like the idea of self-harm outcomes from spending 2 actions on your turn. Just doesn't feel worth it. Illusory Creature. I'm interested to see everybody's thoughts on this one. 2 actions, has the auditory, concentrate, illusion, manipulate, olfactory, and visual traits. This is for arcane and occult casters. Has a range of 500 feet. Lasts for 10 minutes while you sustain it. You're going to create an illusory creature that's large or smaller. This does create sounds, it has a smell, and it feels real on a touch, so it's quite the illusion. It can't speak, but you can speak through it, disguising your voice, which is kind of cool and fun anyway. It uses your spell attack modifier for its attacks and your spell DC for its AC, meaning it's probably pretty sturdy. If it's hit by an attack or fails a save, flat out, it ends. Not great. Creatures get 2 actions when you sustain them, so just like any other summoned creature or minion, this is going to get 2 actions when you sustain the spell using that 1 action. This does 3d4 mental damage on a strike. If the creature is disbelieved by an enemy, that enemy recovers half the damage that it took from your illusory creature here. And if you heighten this, just +1, it adds another d4 mental damage, and the size category can increase by 1, so you can start making bigger and bigger creatures. I love this because I like creative options. This is very interesting in what it allows you to do, and because this is something that can be touched and smelled and seen and all that, there's a lot to this creature that's significant. You could use this to be any creature, at least eventually. Because it lasts 10 minutes if you sustain it, and you only have to stay within 500 feet of it, you can use it to lure creatures away from a camp, or try to scare them off, for that matter, because you can make sounds through it. With that, it can still act in combat. Yes, it ends if it takes any kind of damage, or just fails a save in general, but it does have a pretty decent AC, because it's your spell DC, so that's going to feel pretty good. So don't worry too much about that. And as far as it saves, it's your spell DC -10, so pretty good saves as well. The only bad case in my mind is it fails against an AoE spell, so essentially removing it for free because it was already trying to do damage to you and your allies. Because if it does pull a melee combatant over and a melee combatant runs up to your illusion and strikes at it, using at least 2 actions right there and increasing multiple attack penalty, great, you basically wasted a melee enemy's turn trying to focus on something that doesn't even exist. That's a win for you and your party anyway. The damage isn't a lot, but it is a nice little bonus, and again, it can redirect enemies, which is nice and actually very useful in a lot of situations. And this is also just a cool spell that I like better than summoning spells, because despite the early loss of the creature, it just gives you way more versatility than a summoned creature does. And I think that that versatility and the creativity plays into it makes this slightly better. Oh, and one thing to remember, the way it's worded is that it disappears when hit by an attack or fails a save. If it succeeds against an AoE damage effect, like a fireball, it can still take damage or look like it takes damage and not disappear because it was not hit by an attack and it did not fail the save. Keep those words in mind, they matter. Lucky number. This takes 10 minutes to cast, as the contingency and divination traits is for arcane, divine, and occult casters. Lasts until your next daily preparations, and you roll a d20 and record the number. You get a new reaction that you can use. Once you use that reaction, the spell ends and you are immune to the spell until the next daily prep. The reaction is called That's My Number. The trigger is you roll the number you had from the start of the day. So you rolled that d20 at the start of the day. Now you've rolled that number again on some d20 check, as long as it's not a secret check. So attacks, saving throws, skills, things like that. Then you can re-roll the check using the new result, whatever you got in your new roll. But if you get the same number again, you get a crit fail no matter what you were doing. This is scary because if you don't think about it, it might seem like a really good choice at the start, but it's not, and I'm going to tell you why. So what are the outcomes from your initial dice roll? Anything from 1 to 20, right? That when you cast this spell, you can roll anything between 1 and 20. Well, what does the reaction do? It lets you re-roll if you rolled that same number that you rolled from this morning. Okay, so what numbers would we want to re-roll? Well, we'd probably want to re-roll anything between a 1 and a 10, probably, right? Most of the time. We want to re-roll those. Okay, so there is a 50% chance that the roll I get for using my spell slot at the beginning of the day is a number between 11 and 20. And if that's the case, and I've gotten a good roll at the beginning of the day, when I eventually roll that number later in the day, assuming I do, am I going to use the reaction to re-roll it? Of course not. The chances are it's going to get worse. So if I roll well at the beginning of the day, I've just burned that spell slot for nothing. That was just a massive waste. If I rolled a nat 20 when I cast this spell, I will never, ever consider the reaction, not even once. And that's probably true all the way down to at least 15, probably all the way down through 11. If I, say, roll a low number when I cast the spell, then we have other issues. If I never roll that number again, so let's say I rolled a 2 at the beginning of the day, and I never rolled a single 2 through the rest of that adventuring day, I used the spell slot and it did nothing, because I never rolled the number again. So I can't use the reaction. Cool. Okay. And then, let's say it does come up. I rolled a 2 at the beginning of the day, I roll a 2 later on, and then I roll a 2, let's not say that. Let's say I roll a 4 for my new roll. Great. I got a new extra roll, and it did nothing, because it didn't actually improve my level of success, because it went from a 2 to a 4. Fantastic. Great use of that spell slot. And then, of course, there's the worst case scenario, the 2, then the 2, then the 2. I probably already crit failed with the 2, let's be honest. Right, so let's make it a little better than that. A 9. Right, beginning of the day, I rolled a 9. I rolled a 9 later on for a saving throw. I'm like, well, that's terrible. I roll a 9 again. Great, crit fail. But because I used my reaction, it's what I probably had before with that 9 was a fail. When I re-roll, because getting another 9 is a crit fail, instead of just a 1, 2, and 3 being a crit fail, I've actually added a 5% chance to crit fail. I've made my new roll a higher chance to crit fail. I made my re-roll worse than my original roll on average. It's just by the numbers. This is an awful, awful spell. Everlight. This is 3 actions, has Concentrate, Light, and Manipulate for all of our spell traditions, which is fun, has a range of touch, and you use a gemstone worth at least 6 gold pieces, which is a tiny amount, and it lasts unlimited. This is a forever spell. The stone glows bright light in 20 feet and dim light in another 20 feet, and it only ends if the stone is destroyed. This might sound like a nothing spell. I mean, there are cantrips that create light, so why does this matter? It matters because it's permanent. Torches aren't always wise because they can be put out, right? There are certain ancestry abilities that create light, but they might be limited in duration, or they might not be as bright. So they exist, but then you have to go a specific way to get those. And no, light isn't the most important thing in the game, but darkness can be a hindrance, especially if your party doesn't have all dark vision. But again, there's a reason that this is better than any of the other light spells, in my opinion, in the game. Or at least that I've talked about yet, and I can't think of any that I like better than this. It's because of that permanence. Normally, the longest we get out of a spell slot is for the whole day, and for the whole day is cool. This is permanent, which means if we're at the end of the adventuring day, we're about to rest for the night, I have an extra rank 2 slot sitting there. If I have this spell, I just created a permanent light for somebody in the party to have in the future. Over time, all of these what would be wasted spell slots become these permanent magic objects that are helpful to the party. And there's value in that. I don't mean monetary value. I don't mean you're going to go selling them, although depending on your GM, you might be able to go sell them, because why not? It's a permanent lit up object that might actually have a lot of value to somebody who wants to buy it. But either way, it means that your party could be carrying around all of these objects to help them see enough. If you wanted to, eventually you could just light up whole rooms by tossing them about here and there. And you just never waste it. So that's what I like about this spell. Is it the most powerful thing? No. It always has value and it has permanence, and that is extremely rare. Expeditious Excavation. 2 actions, Concentrate, Earth, and Manipulate. This is for Arcane and Primal casters. Has a range of touch. You touch 1 5-foot cube or smaller of dirt. You remove that cube of dirt. If there was a creature no more than 5 feet across, so medium or less, that creature must make a reflex save. On a success, nothing happens, and they just get moved to an adjacent cube. They don't choose to move. It's not like, this is forced movement onto an adjacent cube. On a fail, the creature falls prone, either in the pit or an adjacent square of its choice. On a crit fail, the creature falls in the pit, falls prone, and takes falling damage as normal for the distance they fall. You can heighten this +2, so 2 spell levels, to add another 5-foot cube adjacent to the first. I just can't see the thinking here. Best case scenario, I drop a medium-sized creature down into a 5-foot hole. It falls prone and takes no actual fall damage, and I used 2 actions for that? I mean, that's already lackluster, but I'm a caster. I probably want to be at range unless I'm a Gish or something, and then there's better things I can be doing this anyway, but if I am a full caster, I want to be at range. This is touch. For some reason. I don't feel like it should be, but it is. Now, there are ways to turn touch spells into range spells. Then you're turning this into 3 actions to do this very minor thing, but fine. So I'm gambling with my survivability that I'll be able to knock the creature prone or risk getting mauled. Then it only works on sand, gravel, loose earth, stuff like that. So not even like solid stone. And on top of that, there's nothing on a successful save. Just nothing happens to them. I mean, they have to move into a slightly different square, but that almost never is going to matter. And then the heighten is awful. 2 spell ranks to add 1 more square? If you want to get a large creature, just large, you have to use rank 8 slot to affect all the squares that would be underneath a large creature. Just to drop it 5 feet if you're lucky. Don't get me wrong. You could use this and heighten it to a straight up 20-foot down pit for a medium creature, but unless it crit fails, it'll just not fall in the pit. This could have been a cantrip. I don't know. I wouldn't use a resource for it. Calm. 2 actions, has the concentrate, emotion, incapacitation, manipulate, and mental traits. For divine and occult casters, has a range of 120 feet, is a 10-foot burst, and requires a will save. Lasts for 1 minute with sustaining. On a crit success, nothing happens. On a success from a creature, the target has a -1 to its attack rolls. Okay? On a fail, the creature is no longer affected by mental effects and can't take hostile actions unless it is subjected to hostility. And on a crit fail, it works like fail, except it doesn't end if somebody's hostile against it. So let's address that elephant in the room. Yes, this has incapacitation. I don't think this is something meant to target a boss creature. It's an AoE, first of all, meaning you're probably trying to target at least 2 creatures. Possibly more if you can. So you're really going after minions. Why do I think that? Well, minions are usually in a fight, if there is a boss creature at all, and there may not be. If there's no higher level boss creature, this is just dropping on everybody and seeing who you can remove from a combat. If there is a boss creature, if you remove all of its minions, nobody's there to save it. That's what this is all about in my mind. So let's say you hit 3 creatures, and 1 succeeded and 2 just failed. You're not upset. That 1 creature is less likely to crit you and your allies, and 2 creatures, as long as your party's communicating well, just avoid using hostile actions against those 2 creatures. Those creatures are simply out of the combat as long as you sustain this. That's it. They don't play any effect at all. A simple fail on this means a creature is out of the combat until you decide to pull them back in. And that is strong. And like we said, let's say that you are 3rd level casting this with a rank 2 spell slot. In order for incapacitation to matter, the creature targeted has to be at least CR 5. Anything under that, they're not going to get a boost to their save. Probably means, they're going to either succeed or fail on average. As long as you're targeting 2 to 3 creatures, you're going to get some great value out of this. And it lets your party determine how the combat plays out. Obviously, smarter creatures, especially if you get higher level, they might even take a hostile action against their ally just to wake them up out of it if they can. But I don't even know how often that would happen. The last thing you want to do is drop this, though, on one really high level, powerful creature thinking it's going to help you, because it's not. I mean, sure, if it's a melee creature and you really want to have a -1 to its attack rolls, but there's way better spells than this to use for something like that. Shatter. 2 actions, has the Concentrate, Sonic, and Manipulate traits. This is for Occult and Primal casters, has a range of 30 feet, and you target 1 unattended object. This deals 2d10 sonic damage to an unattended object. It ignores the object's hardness, if 4 or less, and on a heightened +1 adds 1d10 damage and +2 to that hardness check we just talked about. Do you find yourself destroying a lot of objects from range in the heat of combat? I can't say that it doesn't come up, and there could be creative, cool uses of this, but most of the time, if I run into critical objects in rooms, they aren't the type that are going to be destroyed. They're part of a puzzle, or they're there for some specific reason. They're magical and therefore aren't going to be destroyed. Assuming this does come up, though, you're likely still just dealing okay damage, right? 11 on average to the object, and you better hope that ignoring the hardness matters enough, because it's just not a lot of damage. For some really pointless objects, maybe, but if the object is meant to be something that matters in some sort of combat situation, I'm guessing it's probably got more, sturdiness than this. I don't know. Maybe you'd find more value out of this than I do, at least the way I run games. I'm probably not putting a lot of objects around that are important to critical adventures that you're just destroying this way. Not useless, mind you. Maybe you want to destroy, I don't know, some object sitting in the middle of a wall that's help holding it up and holding it together. There are situations. Cool things could happen. I just don't see how it's going to be worth a preparation slot. Sudden Bolt. 2 actions, uncommon. Has the Electricity and Evocation traits. Is for Arcane and Primal casters. Has a range of 60 feet. You're going to target 1 creature and they get a basic reflex save. You deal 4d12 damage. The heightened +1 to add a d12. I felt like we needed to talk damage at least a little bit, because I know we've had some other very different kinds of spells here, but sometimes you just want to lay out some damage. There are a lot of solid damage spells, honestly, at rank 2, and this one has no rider on it, just decent range though, 60 feet. I admit I mostly have it here because I have a player who just loves to use it and likes to go for that single target damage, and it does hit like a truck for the level. Most upcast single target damage spells from level 1 might be doing 4d6 damage here, and cantrips are worse than that. The average fail damage on this spell is 26, and that is a solid number for dealing damage. What makes it feel really good is that on a successful save, it's still doing 13 damage, and on a crit fail, it'll kill most things that are CR3, honestly. CR3 or lower, most of them have less than 52 hit points on average, so you're probably just taking something out. And yes, sometimes the best effect is dead, and this can get you there. Sometimes it's just fun to blast something with lightning. Burrow Ward. 2 actions, Concentrate, Earth, and Manipulate. Arcane and Primal. This has a range of 15-foot emanation. It's sustained up to 1 minute, and creatures in the area cannot burrow unless they can burrow through stone. If they try to burrow under here, they get kicked out if they fail on a fortitude save. If they succeed, it means they still have to leave the area, but they aren't booted out of the area. And any creature that can burrow through stone just treats it as difficult terrain. Every heighten +1, when you heighten it to 5th rank, the emanation is 30 feet. The question is, how many burrowing creatures do you fight? And is ejecting them from out from under you, worth it. This is one of those opportunity cost questions. I have no idea how you could justify preparing this or adding it to your repertoire unless you are in a very specific campaign that's dealing with creatures that burrow under you all the time. So, you know, if your entire campaign is underground, I could see it. Even then, it's only effective if you're on the right kind of ground against burrowing creatures that can't burrow through stone, and they have to have some desire to burrow near you in the first place, and they have to save to get kicked out of underground. That's a whole lot of ifs. There is so much that has to go right for this spell to actually do what you want it to do. I almost forgot to mention that it's a fort save, which for creatures that burrow are usually hardier, sturdier, and have higher fortitude saving throws. That's not a great combo. So while not useless, I just don't like the way the spell is designed to try to do what you really want it to do. Okay, and that's our top 5 and bottom 5 from rank 2. I hope you noticed that, okay, there might be 1 or 2 in here that are truly bad spells in my mind, but generally speaking, out of 189 spells, they're good enough that the bad ones still really aren't that bad, other than a couple of them. But we have so many good ones that I had to throw honorable mentions in just like last time. I'll keep them brief. There are so many that are worth taking. When I do rank these, and I'll a little behind the curtain stuff here, when I'm ranking them, what I'm actually doing is I'm keeping a sheet with all of them ranked from S all the way down to D for myself. And there were so many between S and A rank alone. Not very many S's, that's pretty rare. But I even do like S/A and A/B a little bit. Try not to do too much, but it happens. Anyway, I consider B and up very worth your time. There were so many in that category that it was really hard to make this. Having said that, here are a few fun ones, interesting ones, good ones, however you look at them, in my honorable mentions real quick. We have Cutting Insult. This is a single target damage spell that has Frighten built on top of it. So if you're doing single target like you had Fear from rank 1, this is adding damage to that. You have Summon Elemental, which is another, I think, really good summon spell. You're starting off with a CR1 Elemental, and there are some really strong CR1 creature choices. So if you are at level 3 casting this, you're going to get a really strong summon, actually. Then there's Thundering Dominance for anybody who's a player character that's got a companion animal. It's a cool spell to cast on your companion to be able to use. And then there's Ignite Fireworks, which is a great AoE damage with a dazzle effect added on top. And that's it for the rank 2 spells. Which ones do you take on your character every time? Did I put one of your favorites in my bottom 5? Let me know in the comments, and as always, adventure on.